Okay. Can you all see okay? So for the head, we're going to use a whole bunch of colours here. So I'll reiterate what I have to say after I've done it. And it is written down in your workbook, but let's do it. So I'm using a smaller brush. This is an 8, but you can use a smaller brush to wet the head. So I'm going to wet the head like I did last time. So this is just repeating the same process. So really carefully around the outside of the eye. Yes, thank you. Don't go too close to the eye, over the top of my little white feathers. So you leave a reasonable, you can go to your outside line, but don't make the eye too small, okay? So then I'm just forming the outside nicely. And I'm going down to, if you look at your reference image, you can see there's a bluey green and a green and a turquoise, some gold, and then some dark, and then it's got a cream collar. So we're only going down as far as the cream collar. So it's quite a small area, but we're really going to charge it with colour. And I like to paint birds slightly brighter than they are in life. So I'm just moving my head around and looking at the wetness. So what you sometimes find is that when you define an edge by pressing more firmly, so you get a smooth edge if you press firmly and wet an area. You get a raggy edge if you're just going like this. So I've done a smooth edge around the edge of the head like that, but it doesn't put as much water onto the paper. So I'm just going to drop a little bit more water on the inside of that, like that, and underneath down to there. Now there's a little flick of dark down into that cream. I'm not doing that at this point in time. Okay, so I'll just let that soak in a little bit, and then I'm going to use quite a small brush to drop the colour on. Not a big brush. It doesn't mean one as small as you've done the eye, but maybe the next size up. This is a 3, something about that size. So I'm going to pick up cobalt green. Now I don't like this colour. It's a schminker colour, and it's very opaque, but it's got just the right sort of green to add to the soda light to make that Kingfisher greeny kind of top on his head. So I'm picking up, and we don't use too much of it, and it just mixes in. So I've got green, soda light, and phthalo turquoise, and raw sienna. So this is all about observation. So raw sienna is at the eye, around the eye and to the beak, and there's a wee tiny flash at the back. So maybe I'll put that on first today. I didn't when I painted it before, because the darker colours, of course, overpower lighter colours. I'm just going to turn this. I turn my paper a lot when I paint, because it's really good to turn it so that you're not painting like this, upside down. Is that zoom in okay for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to do exactly the same as last time. I'm just dropping some raw sienna in here and up and over the eye. Just a little bit. You can see how carefully I'm touching it. And I'm just going to put a little splash at the back of his head there and just form that back there. Okay? That's all the raw sienna I'm doing. So I'm just taking it to the top. I wash off my brush, and then so that you can see I've still got quite a lot of water on the surface. If I tip it, it pulls a little bit at the edge. That's how much water you want. So then I'm going to pick up the green, and you'll see what I mean about this green. So it's quite a solid kind of a green. So it's a little bit wet, my paper still. So I'm just going to tip it back towards the green. And you'll notice when you put that paint on how it pushes the water away and dries out. So I've just pushed that back there and wet it. And maybe I've got a little bit too much water on, so I'll just dry a bigger brush. This is quite a big brush, but you'll see what I do. And to get rid of the water, rather than using a tissue, a dry brush will wick it up.
Can you put the screen? Yeah, thank you.
So if you just touch the water, it will pick up the water, not the pigment. Okay, so there's our green. And over the top of that, I'm going to put sodalite, which is the blue, the dark blue. It's a really powerful colour, so I'm just moderating it a little bit. I'll show you my palette how I do that. So I'm just going like this, just so that I haven't got a big blob. You still can't see it. I'm just doing this so I haven't got a big blob on my. It's still full strength, but I haven't got a big blob on the end. So that green spread out nicely. I lay my paper back flat on the page again. And with the sodalite, I'm just going to reform the edge if it's not perfect. And it goes over the top. And see how it's spreading out nicely? Isn't it exciting?
It is.
Now, if you want to, you can do a little wee flick with a smaller brush out at the back, just a few little feathers out the back like so. Just for interest. I'm just going to put a little bit more on there. A little bit away from the edge, because I really want the top a wee bit lighter, because the light will be hitting the top of his head. Okay, so this is going quite nicely. I added some in the wrong place then.
So you added more
sodalite
with the top.
on top. I just added it just down from the top.
Yeah.
But it's all wet. So there's his little blue top of his head. And I'm not doing strictly the same as I'll put my raw sienna down, and I'm picking up hematite. Hematite is the charcoal colour. And now I'm going to add some of that. So I've got a wet brush. Just make sure I haven't got too much on. Now this is not as powerful as the sodalite. So I'm just going to bring the hematite down here, just form the rest of that head nicely down there to the front, and let it blend in with the raw sienna. And then I'm going to put that, where else am I going to put that? I'm going to put that at the bottom to the collar. So I'm turning it around so that I can see what I'm doing. See how this is all granulating out nicely? In fact, I'm just going to put another drop of water on the top of the head here with a number 8, because I want this to stay wet and granulate. And it's starting to dry because it's near an edge. So here comes some hematite, and that's going to go down at the bottom. Now I'll just drop it in like this. So this is like a little drag and drop, but then I'm going to use what I call my shaky hand technique along here. Oops, I've gone too low. It's okay. He's going to have a narrow collar at the back. Okay, my guy. I didn't follow the line. So I'm just dropping that in there. I haven't got quite enough water or paint on my brush. So I'll pick up a bit more and drop that in there. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just dropping it into the water, and it's starting to spread upwards. And I've got a shaggy edge. Okay. Like so.
So you're staying away from the eye.
Staying away from the eye. So I'm just going underneath the second row, right over the top of my painted feathers. So there they are appearing through there. And I'll just take a little bit up into the front like that. And then the star of the show, non-granulating, but fantastic colour. And it's splurged all over my palette. Oh, it's splurged out of the tube before, so I've got a whole bunch on my palette here. So I don't need the tube. And this is one of the most powerful colours in creation. So I've tidied my brush. I'll put a little bit. Phthalo turquoise.
Do you use it for anything other than Kingfishers?
Yes, it's a wonderful colour to mix with yellows to get a bright green. It's a very useful colour.
It's quite staining, isn't it?
It's a very staining colour. So I'm just going to drop that in here. So along the top of where the black is.
Oh, that's
over the top there. So I'm just dropping it. Can you see the action I'm using? I'm just dropping it on with a little brush. Isn't it a fantastic colour? So I've got quite a bit on there. Then I'm just going to look and see what happens. Drop a bit more water on here and a little bit more water on top of that hematite. You're better to drop water on top of pigment than where you want it to go to. So if you want pigment to go somewhere, don't drop it where you want it to go. If it's already wet, drop it on top of the pigment and it pushes it out there. So that you want the water to move the pigment, not your brush to move the pigment. Okay? So I'm just managing this now as it dries. I'll just have a little look. I think I need a bit more hematite in the front. Looks a bit anemic compared with the other colours because they will all fade a little bit. The hematite doesn't fade too much. I'll just tidy my brush. I'll just blend it into the turquoise and then I'm going to clean off my brush. Not quite so much water on it. And drop some more water in here to the edge. And at the front edge, I'm going to make that a little bit raggy because it's kind of feathery into the beak. And we're done. Maybe I'll drop a little bit of water. I want that raw sienna to go a little bit further. So I'm dropping some water onto the raw sienna. Then I'm going to give it a little tip. So I'm holding it about 3 inches off the ground. And I'm just going to wait. So I don't know whether you can see it on the camera, but it's not wet to the edge now here. So I'm just going to drop some more water in there too. And then I'll tip it back the other way. So you just tip it wherever you want the pigment to go. I know that turquoise looks very blue on the screen. So I'm just touching this so that the water spreads. And then I'll tip it towards the back. And I think I'd like a little bit more raw sienna going over his eye. So I'll just add that. And I've got it, I'll show you this in the screen. So I've got it quite, it's not watery, but it's got plenty of water with it. So I'm just going to drop that in here. It's not doing a lot because the phthalo turquoise is so strong. Okay. Then I'm going to just sit it on about that thick. So a little bit of a glasses case or the lid of your palette. And I'm just going to let that sit like that to dry. Okay, so I'll reiterate what I did. I wet it really carefully, created a smooth head over the top here. Just move that where you can see it. Then I added the raw sienna. So the raw sienna has completely disappeared from the back. I'm just going to, with a dry brush, I'm just going to wick up a little bit of water. I've got quite a lot of water there. So this is a good way of doing it without removing colour. Takes off a tiny bit, but if you just use the very tip of a dry brush, it just sucks it up like a little pipette. Okay, and I'll let that sit. So raw sienna there, and then the green over the top, and sodalite over the top of that. Let it drift down, leaving a gap in the middle, hematite around the bottom, and then the phthalo turquoise into the middle. And every kingfisher you look at looks different. So it's okay if yours looks different too. All right. And we can always do a second layer on it later if it's not dark enough. But don't feel you have to absolutely paint colour over the whole surface. Okay?
Okay.
And stop recording.